Chapter 3-7, Equations of Lines in the Coordinate Plane. So the slope of a line is represented by the letter M. Some people think of it as rise over run, but the mathematical formula is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. Okay, another way to remember it is to say delta y over delta x. This triangle is a Greek letter, delta. But anyhow, this formula right here is the main mathematical formula, and you just use this when you have 2 points on the line to find the slope. So when we say rise over run, for the slope formula, the rise is how far up down you travel, and the run is how far left right you travel. Okay, so you just go from one point to another to find the slope on the line. And if you travel up, that's in the positive y direction. If you travel down, that's in the negative y direction. You travel right, that's in the positive x direction. You travel left, that's in the negative x direction. All right, problem 1, they want us to find the slope of line B. So here's line B. Okay, the red line right here, and there's 2 points on the line, -1, 2, and 4, -2. X is the first number, y is the second number. So see if you can use the slope formula here and try to find the slope of line B, represented by the lowercase m and the lowercase b. So it doesn't matter which way you subtract as long as you're consistent. You go the same way both times. So for the change in y, I am going to do 2 minus -2. Okay, y is the second coordinate, so it's 2 minus -2. And then for the x's, we have to subtract the same direction. I'm going to do -1 minus +4. -1 minus +4. Okay, the two negatives make it positive. So in the numerator, 2 plus 2 is 4. And -1 minus 4 is -5. Okay, a negative in the denominator is the same thing as a negative in the numerator, or just a negative out front. So the slope of line B is just -4/5. Okay, please pause and see if you can find the slope of line D. Okay, that's this red line right here, and the 2 points on that line, there's one right here, 4, 0, and there's one right here, 4, -2. So use those 2 points and see if you can find the slope of D, please. All right, so change in y in the numerator. Okay, so the y is the second number. I'm going to do 0 minus -2, 0 minus -2, and then x is change in x. X is the first number. I'm going to do 4 minus 4. 4 minus 4. Okay, the two negatives make it positive, and 0 plus 2 is 2. 4 minus 4 is 0. Can you divide by 0? No. So this is considered undefined. So there's basically 4 types of slope. Okay, if the line goes up and to the right, that's considered a positive slope. If the slope goes down and to the left, that's a negative slope. If the slope is horizontal, perfectly horizontal, that's a 0 slope. And as we just did on the graph, if the line is vertical, that's an undefined slope. The way I remember which is which with these two, as you can see, the horizontal line passes through the y-axis. Okay, so this point here will be the equation of the line. Let's say this was 5 or so. the equation of this line would be y equals 5 as an example. All right, and if you recall, for slope, it's the change in y over the change in x. But if y equals 5, that means y will never change. So the change in y will just be 0 over the change in x. Okay, and 0 over some number is just 0. So since there's no change in y, the slope is 0. Now on the undefined slope, the horizontal line passes through the x-axis. So the equation of this line will be whatever this point is right here. Let's say it's x equals 4. All right, and if you do the slope, change in y over change in x, since x equals 4, the change in x will just be 0. And in the numerator, we have the change in y, and you cannot divide by 0. So in this case, it would be undefined. All right, so since there's no change in x, you can the denominator ends up being 0 since there's no change in x. So the basic line equation is y equals mx plus b, and this equation is considered to be in slope-intercept form. Okay, the reason that is because when you look at this equation in this form, you can get the slope and the y-intercept just from looking at the equation. Okay, slope is the letter m and y-intercept is the letter b. And in case you didn't know, y-intercept is the point where the line crosses or meets the y-axis. So this equation here is said to be in point-slope form. So it is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And the reason it's in called point-slope form is because you can get the slope and 1 point from looking at the equation. So m, once again, is representing the slope, and the coordinates of the 1 point that the line, one of the points that the line passes through, is going to be x1 and y1. So that is just 1 point. Okay, and that is x1, comma, y1. So if you have 1 point in the slope, you can easily write this equation. Okay, problem 2, what is the graph of y equals 2/3 x plus 1? So why don't you try that on your graph paper, please? So we can see this equation is in the form of y equals mx plus b. All right, and just from this equation here, I can tell that b is positive 1. All right, so let's see. Let's make a note of that. B equals positive 1. So that is the y-intercept, okay? We said B represents the y-intercept, so I'm going to go to my y-axis and find positive 1 on the y-axis. All right, so that's right here, positive 1 on the y-axis. That's going to be my first point. And remember, the slope is represented by m. It is the number that's times x. So we can see the slope is just 2/3. M equals 2/3. All right, so m equals 2/3. And recall that slope is rise over run. So positive 2 means that you go up 2. And positive 3 means that you go right 3. And you can also do the exact opposite. You can go down 2 and left 3. But let's start with the basics first. Okay, I'm going to go up 2 and right 3. So go to my starting point at 1. I'm going to go up 2, 1, 2, and then I'm going to go right 3. 1, 2, 3. So right there is another point on the line. All right, so I went up 2 and right 3. Now, just for your information, you can do the exact opposite. So if you want to go down 2, we can go 1, 2, and then instead of right 3, we can go left 3. 1, 2, 3. So right there is actually another point on the line. So if you go down, that's considered -2, and if you go left, that's considered -3. 2 over 3 is the same as -2 over -3, so it's the same thing. All right, so y equals 2/3 x plus 1. You only need 2 points, but if you want to do 3, that might help to make it more straight, okay? But if you connect those 2 points and connect the other 2 points, that is the line for y equals 2/3 x plus 1. So next up, let's try to graph this here on the graph paper. We have y minus 3 equals -2 times x plus 3. Let's try it. So this equation is in point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So just from the equation, we can see that m, the slope, equals -2. Okay, if you want, you could say -2 over 1. That's the same thing. And this translates to down 2 and right 1. Okay, so you can do down 2, right 1, or you can do the opposite, up 2 and left 1. It's the same thing. So this is the slope, but we need a starting point. Okay, and we can see from the equation, we can get x1, y1 from the equation. All right, if you see right here, this is minus x1 and this is positive 3. See that? Negative x1 is positive 3. So you have to change the sign on this. So if negative x1 is positive 3, that means x1 is going to be -3. All right, so you have to change the sign on what it says in the parentheses. All right, same with the y1. If you see that negative y1 is -3, that means y1 is positive 3. Okay, so x1 is -3, y1 is positive 3. This is going to be a starting point. So let's do -3, 3. All right, so this is x equals -3. Here's the x-axis. -3 is right here, and y equals positive 3 right here. Okay, so that's the starting point. -3, positive 3. All right, so I'm going to label that point -3, 3. And now we just need to apply the slope. And we are going to go down 2 and right 1. So starting at this point, down 2. So that's 1, 2. So we went down 2 and then right 1. Right 1 point. And that is the other point right there. All right, so I'll do that in blue. All right, and if you want to do one more, you certainly can. Okay, instead of down 2, right 1, you can go up 2. 1, 2, and instead of right 1, you can go left 1. So this would be right there. All right, but it's the same thing. And now you can just connect 2 or 3 points, and you have your line. Connect these 2 right here, and the line keeps going, and I'm going to connect these 2 right here. And the line keeps going forever. So that's it. You just find the starting point and then you apply the slope. All right, -2 over 1 is the same as 2 over -1. That's the same thing. So that's why you can reverse this. Okay, problem 3. They want to know what is an equation of the line with slope 3 and y-intercept -5. So they just want you to write the equation y equals mx plus b. Okay, the easiest way to do this, the slope is 3 and the y-intercept is -5. So I want you to plug these two numbers into this equation, and that's it. All right, we know that slope is represented by the letter m. So the number 3 gets plugged in place of m. And we know the y-intercept is represented by the letter b. So the -5 gets plugged in for b. So to write this equation, we have y. M is going to be +3. We have x. And b is going to be -5. That's it. You just plug in the numbers that they gave you. Okay, so next up, part B. What is an equation of the line through -1, 5 with slope 2? So in this case, we have one point and the slope. It's best to use point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So see if you can take these numbers here and plug them into the correct place in this equation. Okay, for the point, that gets plugged in at x1 and y1. So the first number on the point is x1, and the second number on the coordinates is y1. Okay, and as always, the slope is represented by m. So y minus y1, the y1 gets plugged in right there. The slope of 2 gets plugged in right there. And x equals -1 gets plugged in right there in place of x. Y minus y1 is going to be y minus +5. M is going to be +2. X minus x1. X minus x1 is -1. So that's it right there. Okay, and we really know that 2 negatives in a row is positive, and that's it. You can just make it one positive sign if you want to, but that's the line equation right there. Okay, please try these two examples real quick. They want an equation for each one. They want a line equation for each one. This first one, the slope is -1/2 and the y-intercept is 2. So use this equation. And the second line passes through -1, 4 with slope of -3. So use that equation. All right, try those two, please. All right, so for the first one, the slope is m and the y-intercept is b. Okay, so in place of m, I'm going to plug in -1/2. And that's times x plus b. In place of b, it's going to be a +2. So that's your answer right there. Y equals -1/2 x plus 2. All right, second problem. The point that it passes through is x1, y1. So in place of x1, I'm going to plug in -1. So this is going to be x minus -1. In place of y1, I'm going to plug in +4. So that's going to be y minus 4. And in place of m, I'm going to plug in -3. Okay, the 2 negatives in a row make it positive. So really, that's just x plus 1. But that is your final answer. Y minus 4 equals -3 times x plus 1. Problem 4, what is an equation of the line at the right? So we're looking at this line here in red, and there are 2 steps in finding the equation. You want to find the slope, and then you want to plug in 1 point. So use point slope formula and plug in one of the points at x1 and y1 after you find the slope m. So formula for slope, change in y over change in x. Y is the second number on the coordinates. So we're looking at the second number for the change in y. I'm going to do 5 minus -1. All right, change in y is going to be 5 minus -1. And then change in x is going to be 3 minus -2. Okay, so for the change in x, it's going to be 3 minus -2. Okay, two negatives make it positive, and 5 plus 1 is 6. Two negatives make it positive, and 3 plus 2 is 5. So the slope m is 6 over 5. So if we were to write this equation here, we just pick either one of these points, all right, and plug it in for x1 and y1. Let's call this point x1 and y1. All right, so let me erase this formula here. If we do y minus y1, that's going to be y minus 5, and that equals m, which is 6 over 5, times x minus x1. X minus x1 is 3. And that's it. Okay. If you want to use the other point, you certainly can. You can make this x1 and y1. Okay, why don't you pause and try to do it with this point here. All right, y minus y1 is going to be y minus -1. And that's going to equal 6/5. The slope doesn't change. 6 over 5 times x minus x1, but x1 is -2. All right, as you can see, in both cases, we have two negatives in a row, so you can just make it positive. And that's it. Y plus 1 equals 6/5 times x plus 2. Problem 5, what are the equations for the horizontal and vertical lines through 2, 4? So here's the graph of the horizontal and vertical lines through this point, 2, 4. See if you can write the line equation for each one. All right, this equation here, it passes through the y-axis. So this is just going to be y equals. Well, what number does y equal? We can see it right here. It passes through the point y equals 4. So that's it for the horizontal equation. And then for the vertical line equation, we can see it passes the x-axis. Okay? And what point does it pass the x-axis? Well, that's right here. X equals 2. So the equation for this line is x equals 2. So it's pretty easy. This line was x equals 2, and this line was y equals 4. All right, last one. What are the equations for the horizontal and vertical lines through 4, -3? See if you can get that one, please. All right, it's actually very simple. X equals 4, and y equals -3. That's it. All right, x equals 4 is the vertical line. If you went to If you went to x equals 4, that'd be about right there. And y equals negative 3. If you went on the y-axis to negative 3, it would be about right there. So that would be it. And this point right here, that would be 4, negative 3, the point where they meet. Problem number 29, they want us to write the equation of this line. So we're going to use point slope form. You want to plug in one point and the slope. So remember the formula for slope, it's going to be change in y over change in x. So the first step is to find the slope. All right, we can do that right here. So using these 2 points, change in y is the second number. I am going to do 6 minus 3. And in the denominator, I'm going to do change in x, negative 2 minus positive 1. Six minus 3 is 3. Negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3. And 3 over negative 3 is just negative 1. So that is our slope. All right, so the slope is negative 1, and that gets plugged in place of m. All right, and now we can use either of these 2 points for the y1, x1. All right, so let's try this point right here at first. We'll use this point right here. This is going to be x1 and y1. So for y minus y1, we're going to do y minus, and y1 is 3. M is the slope, that's negative 1. And then x minus x1 is going to be x minus positive 1. And that's it. Okay, see if you can write the equation using the other point right here. All right, using the other point, this is going to be x1 and y1. So for y minus y1, y1 is positive 6. And that equals m, the slope, which is negative 1. And x minus x1, x1 is negative 2, so this is negative 2. 2 negatives in a row make it positive. All right, and that's it. All right, and just for your information, if this 1 weren't here, if it was just a negative sign without the 1, let's say this was just a negative sign right here, that would still be the same equation. Okay, so the negative 1 is the same as just the negative sign because it still gets distributed to both terms. All right, let's see if we can do the graph of number 21. We have y minus 1 equals negative 3 times x plus 2, so let's go to the graph. So we're trying to graph the line with this equation, and we can see it is in point slope form. Okay, so this is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. All right, so the first step is to get the slope, and we can see from the equation the slope m is clearly negative 3. So the slope m is negative 3. And if you want to make that a fraction, that's negative 3 over 1. Now that slope, the numerator is the change in y. So negative 3 means it goes down 3 units. and the denominator is the change in x. So positive 1 means it goes right 1 unit. Okay, so down 3, right 1, or you can do the exact opposite, up 3, left 1. It's the same thing. Now we need to find a starting point. All right, and if you look at the equation here, we see that negative x1, is positive 2. Okay, so you need to change the sign on that. That means x1 is going to be negative 2. All right, and same thing with the y1. We see negative y1 is negative 1. So that means y1 is positive 1. All right, so notice we changed the sign. For the x plus 2, the x1 is negative 2. For the y minus 1, y1 is positive 1. All right, so that's going to be our starting point, negative 2, 1. We're going to start at that point. Okay, so let's go to negative 2 on the x and 1 on the y. All right, negative 2 on the x and then 1 on the y, and that's your starting point. And then after that, all you have to do is apply the slope. Okay, so down 3 and right 1. Let's go to our point. We're going to go down 3, 1, 2, 3. So since we went down, that's negative 3. And then right 1. Right 1. So that's positive 1. And that is a point on the line. We can also do the exact opposite. Instead of going down 3, we can go up 3. 1, 2, 3. We went up 3, so that's positive 3. And instead of going right 1, I can go left 1. So just 1 unit to the left, and that's negative 1 since we went left. Okay, so notice down 3, right 1, and it's still on the same line if we go up 3 and left 1. It's just the opposite. And now we can draw in a line. You really only need 2 points, but you just connect those 2 points, connect these 2 points, and that's your line right there. All right, so you needed to get the starting point and then just apply the slope in either direction. And that's how you graph it.